Hello Wolfpack, got a little video here on kind of a shorter term moves on Bitcoin, looking at the hourly chart and also the daily chart here, because there's quite a bit to look at on the short term and a little bit too much to put into a Twitter post. So I thought I'd make a little short little video here, no longer than 5 minutes, hopefully, just get a little outline of what's actually happening here. But essentially what happened on Bitcoin is we had a little bit of a pump, as you guys would be kind of well aware of at this point. We had a little bit of a pump up all the way from around 37k to around 42k. And I just want to point out very clearly that, you know, I predicted this pump in the bull case video, and I also predicted the drop in the following video after that. And you know, immediately it struck me that, well, Bitcoin's very clearly rejecting from this uptrending pink line, right? This thick pink line started in December 2020, went all the way through to June or May 2020 as well. So both of those, and then also went through to January 2022. And what did we do? Well, it's quite simple, to be honest with you. We came right up to that line, and as soon as we closed this daily candle, I posted on Twitter, this is going to be a rejection from the pink line, watch out, and it was, right? As soon as that daily candle closed, we started there at 42k, and we've dropped all the way down to around 38.8k at this point on Bitcoin. And so that rejection is nothing to be sitting on your fingers about. This is something that is quite serious. This is a big rejection. It's very bearish. When you drop below a support line, you come back up, reject off it from the downside, you generally end up going further down. You generally end up, in this case, probably going towards 35k. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that though, and we'll look at the hourly chart in a second and see why. But first and foremost, let's look at some of the stuff on the daily chart. Well, we had a bullish MACD cross. However, with this recent drop, this massive drop down, this bull trap, as expected, we've seen that flatten out. And so if we close the daily candle where we are right now, say we close the daily candle below 40k, that bullish MACD cross is not going to be happening anymore. We're actually going to avoid that bullish MACD cross. We can also see that on this drop, we have actually lost the Gaussian channel, lost for 21 EMA. We've also lost the 50 SMA as well. And so if we close below 40k, we will lose all of those things, right, that we just gained back yesterday. All the things we gained back yesterday will be lost once again. And we'll be back to where we started, essentially. And we'll be back to where we started in a much more bearish mindset, because people will see that, hey, this pump hasn't worked just like the others. Now, a lot of people would say that, you know, what about Bitcoin here? Let's delete all this. What about Bitcoin? Don't you think Wolves of Crypto, don't you think, Wolves, that this is a ascending triangle formation? Okay, and a lot of people are saying this. A lot of people are saying, look at that. That's a clear ascending triangle formation on Bitcoin. I would say it's a little bit debatable. The reason why is because the way you're meant to draw patterns on charting is taking into account the wicks. Okay, first and foremost, the top wick was here. All right, and then you take into account the second wick, which is actually down here. And you can see that that actually forms quite a clear angle. Okay, and then when you take the bottom wick and the second wick, you can see this is not really an ascending triangle formation, isn't it? This is more of a symmetrical triangle formation. A very clear symmetrical triangle formation rather than an ascending triangle formation. We can also see that, well, it's quite clear that it's not an ascending triangle formation. Why? Because the resistance zone that we're looking at is 45.5k. We went clearly above that on that scenario. Okay, that is where we rejected once, but we went above that on that scenario. And the volume is not there to back up the fact that this is an ascending triangle formation. On ascending triangle formations, what you typically see is ascending volume coming towards the top. Okay, we've seen descending volume coming towards the top. Here we saw slightly ascending volume, but on the first attempt, it is very notable that we saw descending volume coming towards the top. And as of right now, this kind of pump has been ruined without seeing a test of the bottom side. Now, when you see in an ascending triangle formation a retest of the top side, like we saw here, you usually retest the bottom before you even come back to the top. So regardless of whether it's an ascending triangle formation or not, and that's very important, regardless of what it is, we should be retesting around 35k before any of the next move is made. But that's just to outline that, well, you know, it could be an ascending triangle formation, but it's generally just too debatable in order to make a decisive decision about what it actually is. I would say that, you know, it's probably not. I would say it's probably an asymmetrical triangle formation. If you're looking at the conventional way to draw a triangle, you're probably going to be looking at the fact that that's an ascending triangle formation, a symmetrical triangle formation. But that's the conventional way. So who knows? You know, it could be an ascending triangle formation again. But my reason being is that, why does the price move in cryptocurrency? Well, the price moves based on what most people believe at the end of the day. All right, and retail doesn't have that much control anymore, but it does have a significant amount of control, okay? And so if it is debatable as to whether this is an ascending triangle formation or not, it's probably not going to play out like a typical ascending triangle formation. I would also remind you that on both of the occurrences of this retest here and this retest here, we rejected from this secondary up pink trending line. So, that's not typical in ascending triangle formation. On ascending triangle formation, you don't typically run into alternate resistance as well. You usually run into the resistance that is the top of the triangle, not diagonal resistance. And that's very important. Diagonal resistance should not be in any way affecting an ascending triangle formation, because an ascending triangle formation is meant to have horizontal resistance, not diagonal resistance. But, we can sit here all day and debate and basically get nowhere about whether it's an ascending triangle or not. But what we can say for a fact is that, well, even if it's an ascending triangle, that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to break up. Okay, that's a fact. But jumping over to the hourly chart, which is something that's a little bit less debatable, it's a little bit more objective, what we can see, speaking here on the hourly chart, is that, well, we had a broadening descending wedge. Okay, that's a very clear formation where you see kind of the lows getting further away from the highs, and then eventually you break out to the upside. There are bullish patterns, and we made a video on cryptocurrency, on Bitcoin, when we were within this this channel, and we said it's going to break to the upside. Broke to the upside very strong, with the Biden news coming out as well, which supported that pump just a little bit. We moved very, very, very quickly. In 1 hour, we went from 39.4k all the way to 41.2k. Very strong move. And we formed, well, what do we form? A very clear mountain. Okay, that is a very clear mountain, which is not good at all for Bitcoin, right? So we ultimately failed to take over this green box, and given that fact, we have to make it red again. Is now a resistance box, and that box is coming from 40k to 42.5k. We failed to break the 42.5k resistance. We've done this before. Okay, even just looking a little bit to the left, what happened here? We dropped below, we came back up, rejected from 42.5k, the same region where we rejected here, and went further down. Okay, so it's not the first time 42.5k has been a big kind of zone of contention. That's happened many, many, many times. And it's a major resistance. And when you reject from a major resistance, you don't usually just go right back up. Okay, but what I want to say now is that we also lost this dotted yellow line. That's lost. That's gone. Okay, so we lost that as well. And now looking at this objectively, well, we can see we have one more support zone, basically, to salvage this entire move. Before we label this whole thing a bull trap, which so far probably has been, but before we label it that, we have to lose this yellow line, the top of this broadening channel formation, and that is sitting at around 39k. If we start closing consistently below 39k, there is no reason on Bitcoin at all, and I mean this quite seriously, there is no reason at all that I can see at this point in time as to why we won't go down to 35k, this bottom trend line. 35k on the daily chart looks like this bottom yellow trend line. So let me say that again. If we close below 39k on any significant candle, so say we close a 4-hourly candle below it or a daily candle below it, close below 39k, that's going to be an indicator that we're going straight to 35, in my personal opinion. Now, there are a few factors that come into Bitcoin, and I still stand by that. But what I would like to say is that the FOMC meeting where they're discussing interest rates is happening in just 5 days. And if they raise interest rates, there could be very, very, very volatile effects in the market, which we've discussed before. Predominantly bearish effects, in my personal opinion. However, there could be some irrational price action before that happens. We've seen that before. It's not unusual to see irrational price action. For example, back in November, the very top on Bitcoin, the day we marked the very top on Bitcoin, was during a CPI numbers release. We saw a massive pump and then a massive dump on that very day. The pump was irrational, the dump was rational, okay? We have CPI numbers releasing tomorrow, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's tomorrow or the day after. Friday in the US, so whatever that is for you guys, is the CPI number release. And that, again, like what we just saw there in November, leads to a rational price action. So don't be surprised if we do some random dramatic pump or some random dramatic dump. As long as we're below 47k, which is our major continuation zone, as I've explained in many videos, it's bearish. And, we might see a lot of volatility this week, a lot of irrational volatility. Just be prepared for it. Don't expect the TA to work out 100% of the time this week. It's not going to. I can tell you that right now with these massive macro events happening. But as for 47k, I know I said this video was going to be 5 minutes. It's certainly not 5 minutes. As for 47k, that is the major zone we need to be getting above. Once we get above that, we can be bullish again on the market. But as of right now, it doesn't look very likely. The bull market support band's in that region. The POC, which is the strongest resistance zone on this entire chart. The strongest resistance zone on the entire chart on Bitcoin is actually, well, it was at 47k yesterday. It's recently flipped downwards, but 47k, you see this massive mound here. That's where that resistance is. So it's no longer the strongest resistance. That's actually flipped recently in the last day or so. But it is the second strongest resistance zone on the entire chart. Okay, so pretty significant stuff. And then heading over to the weekly chart, we can see that the 50-week SMA is at 47k as well. And that is basically what I determine as the bear market or bull market indicator. When you're below that, you're in a bear market, in my personal opinion. And so 47k is the major region. We have to hold 39. And as for the whole structure, it's debatable as to whether it's actually an ascending triangle or symmetrical triangle formation. And so we can't consider it bullish or bearish. We just have to be neutral and look at other places for the information. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. And I'll be back at it again tomorrow with another Bitcoin video. Possibly going to be looking at Ethereum tomorrow as well. If you have any video recommendations, anything you want me to look at, not altcoins, I'm not really looking at altcoins right now, but anything like on a bigger picture, like for example, total cryptocurrency market cap, etc., anything like that, I'm happy to look at that for you, or a time frame or an indicator. Chuck it in the comments and I'll look it up for you guys as well. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers, guys. Bye.